My name is Zelda Lagranzi, and I had the privilege and life-changing experience to serve Nelson Mandela in different capacities over 19 years. I joined his office in October 1994 and worked for him until his death in December 2013. I am the author of my memoir entitled Good Morning, Mr. Mandela, available online and in good bookstores. I'm a co-host on a weekly TV show called Tussen Ons that is broadcast Thursdays at 8 p.m. on Kyknet en Kie, DSTV channel 145. While the world is in lockdown over COVID-19 and we anxiously count down the days and weeks until our lives go back to normal, well, whatever normal may mean after this, we search for hope and inspiration. Hope is something we all share. No matter your class, race, religion, we all hope for something. At a time like this, even more so. Our common humanity is now more important than ever before. Isolation over the last couple of days has been challenging. I'm anxious at times. I'm worried, not only for myself, my loved ones, family and friends, but for every human being that is affected by this virus. But hope is the one thing that bridges all divide in a time of exponential international crisis. The first few days were crazy. The phone continuously alerting me to news, messages, articles, and yes, even jokes making fun of our corona imprisonment. A strange excitement among people, almost a solidarity in suffering. But as the days go by and people settle in, the shadows start chasing us. I often think of Nelson Mandela, or Madiba as we fondly refer to him by his clan name, and how he managed for 18 of the 27 years in prison in such a tiny prison cell. How did he remain hopeful? He was truly someone special. This podcast is inspired by his hope, dreams, endurance, and the resilience of his human spirit. During our many travels, our meals together over 19 years, I asked many questions. In me, he had the perfect audience. My questions sometimes blunt, and as time progressed and my understanding of his life's purpose clearer, often filled with anger when I thought of his imprisonment. How is it humanly possible to remain hopeful over so many years? There must have been times where resentment and anger overshadowed these days, something we can get familiar with in a time like this. But on countless occasions he said to me, "You know, I found in prison that it's easier to change others than it is to change yourself. You have to work much harder at yourself than being concerned with other people." I often asked him, "How did you get up every morning not knowing whether this ordeal will ever end?" And his reassurance to me rings so true now. You live your life by purpose, principles and ideals, and that is what should encourage you every day. There are many lessons to be learned in parallels drawn between Nelson Mandela's survival of imprisonment and the worldwide lockdown that I decided to talk about these in a podcast. I have no idea on what day of lockdown we are. Unless I check social media, I don't know whether it's day 8, 11, 15, I just don't know. But you see, for us there is an ending. Wherever you are in the world, there will be a date when measures of lockdown will be relaxed. That is our due date. For Nelson Mandela, there was no such date for almost 27 years. Remember, this was a time before technology. Prisoners lost sense of time without calendars, newspapers and watches to wear. It is something that appeared peculiar to me for many years. But now being in lockdown, I kind of understand it. You lose all sense of time. In prison, after a year or two, he surely thought that there may be relief soon, only to find that 3 years, later 5, then 10 passed with no possibility of an imminent release. He never counted the days or hours he was imprisoned like they do in the movies. When he could later get a calendar, he would keep note of the date, but there was never a countdown. We can learn so much from this. We need to be ready for however long this may take. Rather focus on ourselves, our mental and physical well-being, than counting down the hours. Our sleeping patterns are all disturbed. I find myself up late at night, napping in the afternoon and then not being able to sleep at night. When Madiba told me that they were woken up at 4:30 in the morning, come winter or summer, I thought it was just ridiculous. Why? I would ask. He said that routine was important, even in prison. He learned early to use his time wisely. They would be woken up, but some time would pass before the doors and the gates to their prison cells would be opened. So what, other than wait, would you do, was my next question. He was entertained by my inquisitive nature. Oh no, you see, I would then exercise, upon which I would say, how? I could simply not imagine exercising in a 6x7-foot prison cell. Casually he would explain that he would do push-ups, sit-ups and run on the spot. It's only when I started traveling with him and were able to witness his daily routine that it struck me that he still kept the same hours and routine from prison years. Every morning, no matter where we were in the world, he would wake up early and exercise in his room before his day started. I learned that self-discipline was part of his character. In the 60s, before his imprisonment, when he went underground, he was in hiding in Johannesburg at the apartment of a Mr. Wolfie Kudesh. I later met Mr. Kudesh and was amused when he told me that even before imprisonment, Madiba got up before the crack of dawn to run on the spot in his small apartment. Although he never would have admitted it, I'm sure it caused great frustration with the host. The point is, exercising is important in whatever shape or form, and if it's possible in a 6x7-foot prison cell, then I have no excuse. In prison, when doors were opened, prisoners had to clean and prepare for their meagre breakfast that consisted of porridge made from maize and weak tea. For many years, that was exactly what he preferred for breakfast. His luxury version thereof was to add a hand of raw nuts and some warm milk. No sugar, and even healthy meals with no snacking in between was what he lived by. A healthy diet is therefore of the utmost importance, also to feed our souls during this time. After breakfast, prisoners were taken to the lime quarry on Robben Island, where they had to crush limestone all day. I asked about the purpose, and he said there was no purpose for it at all. At first I thought that the limestone was probably taken to the mainland for construction purposes, but he said the heaps just grew and sometimes were dumped elsewhere on the island. He said it was obviously important to keep busy, and even though the action may have been senseless, it kept them occupied, and time passed much faster than it would have just sitting around. Later, these tasks provided a much-needed opportunity for them to communicate, as they were not allowed talking at night when in their cells. 2 things to learn from this. It's important to keep busy with whatever, and when we do have an opportunity to communicate, to do so with intention and undivided attention. I was also intrigued by friendships and relationships the men shared in prison. Imagine being imprisoned now with 5 good friends, 5 acquaintances, and 5 people you may not necessarily like. Madiba was always so diplomatic in describing relationships on the island, and so much of my conclusions about some of these relationships are based on how much he had to say about anyone. What I've learned is that it is impossible for personalities to always get along, even if forced to close proximity by such an ordeal. My question to him was, so how do you manage to get along with people you wouldn't necessarily outside spend time with? He taught me that no person is ever just good or bad. If you know a person has a particular strength or a specific knowledge about something, that is what you focus on. Every person has strengths and weaknesses, and you must be willing to remember that about yourself first. In such circumstance, you focus on the strengths and draw from each other's knowledge and experience about life in general, and in the process, you enrich yourself. You broaden your world by being willing to learn from what others may have experienced in life. Had they focused on the weaknesses of one another, there would have been a small-scale war in prison because they were from different backgrounds, races, religions, and political parties. It is important that common cause takes center stage in difficult times. Ours in the COVID-19 pandemic is very clear. Through studying these friendships and relationships, and Madiba in particular, I've concluded that his greatest strength was his ability to listen. Something he learned as a small boy growing up in rural South Africa. His first childhood memory was about learning to listen during the elders' meeting, and at the end the leader would simply summarize what was said by every person. That is listening with the intention to understand. We live in such a fast-paced world where we chase likes and retweets and popularity that we've lost the ability to truly listen with the intention to understand where another person comes from. We listen to respond, to be the smartest or to generate popularity, likes and retweets. Whilst imprisoned, listening became a survival skill for Nelson Mandela and others. During these uncertain times we now live in, it is important that we start to listen again with the only intention to understand. And what, I would ask, would you do if you had a bad day, or you felt discouraged, or you didn't feel like waking up? He said then you look to those who are having a good day, because tomorrow the wheels turn and they would lean on you. It is part of the solidarity among people when there is a great difficulty in times like these. I love birthdays, not because of gifts, but it provides an opportunity for me to see all those I love and hold dear. It was therefore difficult for me to imagine how birthdays were celebrated in prison. Well, perhaps observed is a better word than a celebration. I'm sure you don't celebrate anything but small victories against your incarcerators whilst being in prison. No, birthdays weren't celebrated, he explained. Later years, when they had access to a little money, they would buy biscuits and share those during birthdays. They relied on the spoken word, a message of goodwill and encouragement with sincerity for exchange during birthdays. I know many people are feeling neglected or isolated during lockdown across the world, especially those who have birthdays over this time. Reach out to them and shower them with beautiful wishes in the absence of material things. As we all know, most prisoners studied, and Madiba did too. Once books were allowed, he read continuously, his particular preference of genre being biographies. They were not easy to come by, but he read from authors across the world, different genres and even different languages. Some of his favorite authors, Sun Tzu, Tolstoy, Shakespeare, and even Langenhoven. I'm so fixed to news, watching series, and social media, but this lockdown has provided a much-needed opportunity for me to read again. When I started working for Mr. Mandela, I had no comprehension of what the 27 years in prison entailed. In fact, I was only 24 years of age when I started working for him. What would 27 years of your life in prison feel like? How the struggle for principle evolved and the hardships they faced over the years puzzled me. After coming to understand the full extent of his life, I asked, surely there must have been days you woke up and felt, is this worth it? Is life even worth living like this? And without even thinking, he always said, yes. You wake up every morning, and when you open your eyes, you have a decision to make. You can either be depressed, angry, and frustrated, or you can accept the situation and nurture hope. You appreciate life in a different way. Ultimately, the decision you make every day will determine the course of your life. Stay in charge of your thoughts and dream. Your mind is the most powerful organ. You work and go about your daily chores, thinking and dreaming about a better life. You dream about those you love and you hope for their safekeep every single day. And that is exactly what we ought to do now. After his retirement from public office, Nelson Mandela picked up pace. He would work non-stop, and I describe those years as the crazy years, trying to maneuver between what he set out for himself to achieve and what others relied on him for. Out of the blue, he would then say, you know, Zaldina, as he called me, I miss prison. I would then say, no, Kulu, meaning grandfather in Xhosa, don't say that. It's a terrible thing to say. He explained that he was missing time to think. It is only when one takes the time to think and analyze things that you can come up with a clear perspective and solutions. So now, lockdown provides us with a few opportunities if we take lessons from how Nelson Mandela dealt with a long period of confinement. We can either be frustrated about our situation, sulk, be angry, or we can grow as human beings, having a very unique opportunity to ourselves in this uncertain time. We have a deadline, and it may not be tomorrow or in 2, 3, or even 6 weeks. We know there will be a day when we can go around chasing whatever we feel necessitates our time and energy. Routine is of the utmost importance. Decide on your purpose, for we each have one. Draw from the strengths of others, their life experience and knowledge, and be the one to inspire those around you when you have a good day. Do some sort of physical exercise every day and realize that even though things are tough, these are the things that make life interesting. Through our struggles, we will discover and learn new strengths. Our children's grandchildren will listen to stories one day of a global lockdown. How will they portray us in dealing with this pandemic? Be kind with words and gestures, for they feed another person's soul. Dream about the places you want to visit or the places you've been to and the people you are fond of. Listen to those around you with the intention to understand, and yes, listen to government in this time, for they need our support. Lastly, take time to think. It's a luxury. Be kind and considerate and take care of yourself. I'm Zelda Lagransie, and you can follow me on a Facebook public page with my name or on Instagram and Twitter as Zelda Lagransie SA. Thank you for listening and good luck.
Here's to the good times.